Welcome everybody. I'm Elder Judge Parazah, or as Zakwan Shabbat Parazah with Masharah Yasharahla and Banya Yasharahla, Office of Torah Law Enforcement, giving you information about the sources that are used, for Pentecost, right? The sources that are used for Pentecost. Ariyashan. All right, the sources that are used for Pentecost, and how we made the conclusion of when Pentecost is. Is that centered? How Pentecost is, and also what we want to do is, toward the end, we want to count the Omer, right? Because everybody may not have been able to fulfill that commandment to count the Omer. All right, so we want to also go into counting the Omer. All right. Again, just to recap on some things that went over before. There's two ways that a lot of these so-called teachers get information, combined with the Bible. And that's going to be historical sources of information. And it's also going to be through experiences from travel and being able to confirm the information that you've gotten through, the different books or the travel, confirm it with the scriptures as being the final conclusion or the final authority, in whatever you're saying. We can't forget that. Right? A lot of people want to use the scriptures as like what they're saying, and that's it. But then you have disputes over the Bible, and that's what we have to go through, different areas. All right. So right now, a lot of people are teaching, and they might go to a random book that was written in, last year or something. But a lot of books that we use in the leadership of Banya Yasharahla Masharah Yasharahla, a lot of these books are, books that when people had to really study. The book I'm looking at now is 120 years old. It's 122 years old. All right, you can see it right here. All right, you see it right here. Ariyashan, you can see it right here. All right, it's called The Social Life of the Hebrews. And if you look at the bottom right here, you see this 1909. Is this coming up clear?
Not the 1909.
That's why I need you to kind of, monitor what's going on with everything. Is that coming up clear?
Con.
All right, so it's 1901, and this is 2023. So this book was written 122 years ago. And it's called, The Social Life of the Hebrews. All right, Social Life of the Hebrews. So what my point is that we have access to, an extensive library, both physical and virtual. And it's through these libraries that we have these books that we bring out this information and share it with you. And also to tighten up on our cultural outlook, as Hebrew people, as Hebrew men and women serving the God of Israel, okay? Serving the God of Israel. All right, so we have this book. But what we're going to do is go into some of these books and share with you what information that you can look at and see. Now, if you want to stay on, some people would rather be on Clubhouse, so you can go on Clubhouse. And I do recommend Clubhouse for people that want to ask questions, all right? Because you can look at the YouTube video on YouTube and you can type a question, but we may not be able to get to the question immediately, all right? But if you're at Clubhouse, the minute you go to the comment section, the chat section, you say something, I see it. Like, the question was asked, so stay here or go to YouTube? And I can immediately, reach over, touch that question, and give an answer back. Well, yeah, let's go to YouTube, or you can stay here. All right, so, you can go to YouTube, or you can go to the YouTube, or stay on here on Clubhouse, whichever is, better for you. But again, if you want to ask a question, you want that question answered, you may want to stay on Clubhouse, or go back and forth between both. Hey, I'm on YouTube now. I got a question. Jump on YouTube and go into Clubhouse. Hey, what do you mean when you say that book is over 100 years old? It said 2019. What are you talking about? And then I'll be like, well, the source that was used for it was. So I'd be able to answer that question a little more. So there's but what's disappearing from our people now is, like I said before, scholarly discourse, intellectual exchange about the different points that people make. Nobody can challenge you. If you're the leader of a quote-unquote Israelite school, nobody can challenge you. Nobody can walk up and say, hey, let's talk about this. You're hiding behind the camera, and if we reach out to you, it's going to be some private conversation that you don't want recorded about something that was in error that you may have brought out. Okay, that you may have brought out, that you may have said, well, yeah, this is the information that the conclusion that we reach, and your conclusion can be can be wrong. Your conclusion can be wrong, and if your conclusion is wrong, then it doesn't make a difference that you're teaching this information, because if it's wrong, it's not going to do anybody any good ultimately and spiritually. It's not going to do any good to anybody. So people need to know what is the source of what you're saying. I challenge anybody. You got people saying, oh yeah, the new moon is on this. The new moon is white. The new moon is black. The new moon is a crescent. The new moon is black, white, crescent. We don't go by the new moon. You got people saying all that. These different types of things. Okay, well, where's your information? Where's your source? And what we've made these men and leaders the ultimate end-all, be-all for any information. If it sounds good, we feel like, oh, we got to obey because they told us to do X, Y, Z. Nah, you're not no robots, all right? The road to hell is filled with good intentions, all right? It's filled with good intentions, the road to hell, all right? It's filled with good intentions. That's the road to hell. So the information we want to bring out is to challenge the so-called the lies that are being taught to our people. There's a big lie going on that says these are people that don't teach the scholar, that don't teach the Torah, telling you, oh, Passover is always going to be on a Sunday because that weekly Sabbath that is going to Pentecost is always going to be on a Sunday, because it says that you got to count 7 Sabbaths and then a day after. These guys don't teach the scholar. They read one verse in the Bible, not understanding the context of what they're reading, and they're reading it in the Hebrew. And they're reading it in the English. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into the Englishman's Concordance, right? And when we go into the Englishman's Concordance, we're going to show you how that word Shabbat is used in so many different verses in the Bible. How it's used to mean 7, it's used to mean week or completion of a count that can begin on the first day, or can begin on the second day. But we know the weekly Sabbath is the 7th day of the week. It's the 7th day of a 7-day count. Okay, because it said the Sabbath, the 7th day. All right. So now, so the information that we use, you can access it also. You need to empower yourself with information that you can access, that you can read, that you can share, so you can help to educate your own self in this path to salvation. Because nobody's gonna be able to stand before Yahweh for you. You gotta stand before Yahweh yourself. You're gonna stand before Yahweh yourself. All right, so you're going to have to go into the kingdom or go into the lake of fire for what you did. Nobody else is going to be able to pay that price for you. or to be able to, to answer for you. So I want you to be careful so that you don't get caught up in charisma, personality, the way people talk, the delivery, and the magnanimous presentation, all right? The magnanimous presentation and the personality that they convey and the energy. Don't get caught up in that. Stop pulling that like that. All right. So you can't get caught up in that. All right. You can't. Does that one work better? Or that one work better? All right. We're gonna hook it up in here. So don't get caught up in personalities and how somebody's saying something. Listen for the knowledge. Above all, listen for the source. All right. If a 3-hour breakdown on 2 verses with no Hebrew and no history, it's just me using my own words to make it sound good to you. All right. So don't fall for the charisma. Now remember, the first pillar of wisdom is what? Is da'ath. All right, is da'ath, as we say. But it's da'ath, which is the knowledge. The knowledge is the first pillar of wisdom. Where is your knowledge coming from? If it's coming from the person that you're talking to, I doubt it. If they are where their knowledge starts and ends at, most likely they're trying to mislead you, or they are misleading you, because you have to give me a source for what you're saying. If you tell me that the new moon is how we determine the Sabbath, give me a biblical, give me a historical evidence and source. An ancient source, preferable. Give me a source. If you tell me it's the 7th day of the week, we can go into writings that took place literally 1,600 years ago and show you how this is how Israel was doing it. We can go to West Africa, this is how Israel was doing it. East Africa, Yemen, it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. I don't think it needs to. Put that back in there. To show how this is how the Sabbath was observed for hundreds and hundreds of years, for over 1,000 years. And now all of a sudden people come up and say, oh no, now you can work on the Sabbath all of a sudden. Now you keep the Sabbath according to the new moon. Now you keep the Sabbath according to, the sunrise. No, these are bug out doctrines. These are false doctrines and false theories that echoes on it. And then turn it around too. You understand? These are false doctrines that people just, came up with because, this is bug out season. Everybody's bugging out. Everybody has a new doctrine that they want you to follow and to believe, from them and from, what they're saying. So use the other extension thing that you double head. Everybody has a different doctrine that they want you to follow and believe them for. And to set themselves, apart from the crowd. All right? Everybody has something that they say is the latest and greatest. Oh yeah, we've been doing this for this long, but this is the way that we're gonna do it now. We're gonna do it this way now. We're not gonna do it that way anymore. And that causes confusion because you want people to look at you, but you're telling them that look at the Bible and look at the history, and you got so many history books, but then when they come to these doctrines, they start teaching you from their own understanding. And the scripture warns us, lean not to your own understanding. All right? And let's go to it. In the book of Proverbs, okay? Proverbs chapter 3. It says, trust in Yahweh with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. So you can't lean to your own understanding and say that this is the conclusion that I have. about this particular topic. This is the conclusion that we came to. But what is the history and what is the Hebrew to prove your point? So it says, lean not to your own understanding. It says, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Can you acknowledge Yahweh? Can you acknowledge his holy language in the conclusion that you've reached? You have to be able to. You have to acknowledge him. Can you acknowledge, well, this is what the Torah says about the conclusion that we've reached? And that conclusion has to be in the Torah. So you have to start out with the premise of the, what's the other one? You have to start out with the premise of the knowledge. This is the knowledge. Now, where is the instruction for the knowledge? Okay, you could have information, but without processing information properly, with a deceptive spirit being behind that information, you can go wrong. You can go terribly wrong. All right, you can go wrong if you don't have the proper instruction, for this information. All right. So now when we go into the Hebrew and you look at the Hebrew culture, we're dealing with their language. Now you're going into some deep waters. And a lot of our people, they don't want to go into the deep. They Hebrew, but they don't want to go into the deep waters of the actual language that the Hebrew people are supposed to be using. Everything is based on the Brazilian people fussing in Brazilian. People in America fussing in English. People in Dominican Republic are fussing and arguing, debating in Spanish. But once the English-speaking people, Portuguese-speaking people, Spanish-speaking people, once all of us can look at the Hebrew sources, we'll have a conclusion that can be understood by everybody across the board. Okay? So we have to acknowledge Yahweh in all of our ways. Okay? So now, let's go into some of the things about the actual Pentecost, and let's use some sources. All right. Now I don't know if they go into the holy days in all of these books. Some of them do, go into the observation of the holy day. All right. So let's check this one out. See what we got in here. This is called History of the Jews. All right. This is just general history. It deals with the death of Simon the Maccabee in 135 BC. That's where it starts at. And this book is actually written in 1891 by the Jewish Publication Society of America. All right. Here's the. Is that coming up on there?
I mean, I see the
All right, so that's the history of the Jews. All right. Take care of your eyes growing up, y'all. Yeah, take care of your eyes. You want to make sure that your diet and your lifestyle is conducive to you being able to keep your eyes probably may fail over the years, but you will want to make sure that you keeping them good, so that in your later years, they may be bad, but they may be able to get a little more use out of them as time goes on. Now here's a good book. It's a dictionary book. This is the illustrated dictionary of the Bible, and it's put out by Nelson, and Nelson Publishing. All right. Nelson Publishing, established in 1798. Now, when you look up feasts and festivals in here, it says the regular assemblies of the people of Israel for worship of the Lord. The feasts and festivals of the Jewish Israelite nation were scheduled at specific times in the annual calendar. and they were both civil and religious in nature. Okay? Some marked the beginning or the end of the agricultural year, while others commemorated historic events in the life of the nation. All right? So now, when we go into this feast book section in here, we see about it talks about the new moon, all right, and it talks about the Passover, and it also talks about Pentecost. Now, for Pentecost, of course, we know that Pentecost is more of a Greek word for it. It was called the Feast of Weeks, all right. So in here, if we look at the Feast of Weeks, this is what it tells us. It tells us that the Feast of Weeks reference the Feast of Weeks. References include Exodus 23:16, 34:22, Leviticus 23:15 through 21, Numbers 28:26-31, Deuteronomy 16:9 through 12, 2 Chronicles 8:13. The feast is observed early in the third month, on the 50th day after the offering of the barley sheaf at the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Right now, we go back in here and look at the feast. If you go back and look at the Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? It should tell us something. It says it was observed on the 14th. Passover started on the 14th, and then the evening commemorated when we left out of Egypt, which was going to be unleavened bread. Right? It's going to be unleavened bread. Right? So it tells us that after the barley sheaf was offered. So now, talking about barley sheaf, so what do? Let's see if they have anything in here for the barley sheaf. All right. All right, so for barley, no, you don't have anything in here for that, for barley. All right, so getting back to the Feast of Weeks, it says that the feast was also known as the Feast of Harvest, as well as Pentecost. The early believers who were gathered at Jerusalem for observance of this feast experienced the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in a miraculous way. All right. So it tells us that the Feast of Unleavened Bread, all right, was the day that it was counted. All right. So on the 50th day after, all right, the offering of the barley, which took place on the 16th of, that took place on the 16th of Abib. Okay. So that's what it tells us about the Feast of Weeks. All right. Now, we don't have anything in here for first fruits, though. The firstborn of the flock, the Hebrew people thought of these as belonging to Yahweh in a special way. They were dedicated or presented to Yahweh on the day of first fruits, a part of the celebration of Pentecost. So that's what we have for first fruits, and that's what we have for Pentecost. All right. Let's see if we have Pentecost in here. All right. I don't think that that's going to be in this particular book. Feast and Holy Days, Spring Feast, a survey of the Holy Days in the Bible. So let's go to page 141. See what they say about Pentecost. Yeah, this book has some lies in here because I'm gonna show you how to decipher these books too. This says, which, when you see a book like this, be wary because this person clearly has an agenda in writing this book. There's some bug out Edomite somewhere. But listen to what they say. This is an example. It says, listen to what they said. You must eat unleavened bread 7 days, and then they said the sheaf offering. It says the sheaf offering this day, the wave sheaf offering. It says the wave sheaf offering is a special day, but it is not a holy day. This day is always on the first day of the week during the 7-day feast of unleavened bread. Okay? So now, if unleavened bread starts on the Sabbath, what do they do then? Because the unleavened day, if unleavened bread, let's say unleavened bread starts on the first day of the week. If it starts on the first day of the week, all right, then when is your sheaf offering going to be? Because if the Sabbath, if Passover starts on the first day of the week, that means it's going to end when? On the 7th day of the week. So you don't have an extra first day of the week because it tells you that it takes place after the unleavened bread day. Because they say it's not a holy day. It's a special day, but it's not holy. It took place after Passover, the first day of unleavened bread. All right? So let's say we don't know that it is the 16th of Abib. So we're waiting for another first day of the week so we can offer the sheaf offering. If the Passover, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is on the first day of the week, that means it's going to end on the 7th day of the week. Which means once the first day of the week comes back around, the feast is over. So this book is wrong. Right? So we can throw this one in the, this can go into the books not to be trusted pile. Right? They'll go put that one in the garbage pile. Now, if we go into a very trustworthy brother, trustworthy source, which is Josephus. Everybody knows about Josephus. All right? He was born in the 1st century. By the time that Rome had invaded Jerusalem in 70 AD, he had made it through the ranks to be a military commander. All right? He was a military commander. All right? So in here, we're going to talk about, again, we're going to go into Antiquities of the Jews, book number 3, all right, chapter number 10. Here it is right here. Can somebody tell me if this is clear or not?
Not really.
It's close. Which part?
The part that's highlighted, I want it to be clear in your screen, so if you need to, you can take a screenshot.
A little closer.
Hmm?
Is it a little closer?
All right. Can y'all switch so they can monitor what's going on right there? I mean, even if you take that or get another one, that's cool. So it says what? In paragraph number 248, it says this. Actually, I'm going to read paragraph 250. Now, Josephus lived over 2,000 years, about 2,000 something years ago, 1,900 something years ago. Let's see now he was an Israelite priest. He was a priest. This is what he said. He said, but on the 2nd day of unleavened bread. When is the 2nd day of unleavened bread? What's that called? If the first day is the 15th of Abib, what's the 2nd day called? Anybody?
16.
The 16th of Abib. So on the 16th of Abib, which is the 2nd day of unleavened bread. On the 2nd day of unleavened bread, which is the 16th day of the month. So he leaves no doubt. He leaves no doubt. Now this is an eyewitness. They partake of the fruits of the earth. For before that day, they do not touch them, and while they suppose it proper to honor Yahweh, from whom they obtain this plentiful provision, it is, in the first place, they offer the first fruits of barley, and that in the manner following. So now he talks about how it's done. So on the 16th day, they did the barley offering. So, which means this guy, all right, this crazy guy that wrote this book, he don't know what he's talking about. So we can just, toss him to the side. All right? So he don't know what he's talking about. Because the eyewitness Josephus, who wrote the history of what Israel was doing, now this is the works of Josephus, complete and unabridged. All right? Complete and unabridged. And this particular version right here was updated as of 1987. All right, so this was published in 1987. All right. Now, of course, 1987 is that's 36 years ago, all right? That's 36 years ago, and I got this book about 1994. All right, so this book has been in my possession for quite some years now. All right. So now, what does it say? He says that the 16th day of the month they offer the first fruits of the barley. This is Josephus, the historian. Can you open that back up, please? What's the problem with it? So that's the record that he has, the record that he gave us. The record that he gave us is a solid record from history. The solid record from history. So how can anybody come and say, no, Josephus is wrong, we're going to do it this way? Now, which one are you going to follow? This guy said it had to be on the first day of the week. This Edomite guy. He said it had to be on the first day of the week. Josephus says, no, we start to count on the 16th of Abib, which is our brother. So we need to go with what Josephus is talking about. Because he's the historian. Josephus is the historian of what's going on. It says, after this, it is that they publicly or privately reap their harvest, which is from Deuteronomy chapter 16 and 9. Let's go into that real quick. Just read that verse. And it tells us, 7 weeks shalt thou number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn, or corn here is meaning grain. To put the sickle to the grain. All right, so Josephus says we began it on the 16th of Abib. All right, and this is the barley harvest. All right, the first fruits of the barley. Also called the sheave offering. All right, so let's see if they have anything about a sheave offering in here. Now this is again going to the Bible, this illustrated dictionary of the Bible. All right. They have sheaf, but they don't have anything about sheave. All right. Let's see what they have on the barley. Then we're going to find something on the barley. Let's check out the barley. How many of you eat barley? Barley is a biblical grain. How many people eat barley now? All right. Or they're waiting for special times to do eat Ezekiel's bread. To eat Ezekiel's bread. All right. So now we're gonna look at barley in here. See what they say about the barley harvest. All right, the barley grain. And then we're gonna see what it says about. I did believe I saw Omer in here too. So for barley, it said. Barley is a grain known since early times. It is well adapted to varied climates, which means we can grow it a lot of places. Ripening quickly and resistant to heat. Quick growth period, germination, maturation, and the heat won't burn it. It usually was harvested before wheat because barley was considered a food for slaves and the very poor, however, it was held in low esteem as a grain. That's very opinionated, all right? In the Bible, barley was first associated with Egypt. It was used as an offering for jealousy, for fodder, and for food, all right? So that's talking about barley. Now, we go a little bit further. We got Onika, brown resin, all right? Now we're going to look up, probably look up weights and measures, right? To see about that omer. That's usually where they have something like that located. Weights and measure, and you don't have omer by itself. Alright? You don't have omer by itself. Let's go look up omer under its own category since they don't have it listed under weights and measures. Alright? And you get like a live digging session for some of these things. Alright? For omer says, see weights and measures where you just came from. But now, this is going to be a volume measurement. Alright? That's going to be a volume measurement. So it's not going to be really a weight. Right? Not going to be a weight. It's going to be an actual measurement of volume. Homer, which is a homer. It says the omer is the standard unit of dry measure. This unit weighed containing about 220 liters, about 6¼ bushel. It was a large measurement, the equivalent of a normal load that a donkey could carry. This is a homer. Now the omer itself is a unit that was equal to 1/10 of an ephah. Another Hebrew word is isahon, translated as 1/10 of an ephah. It was a dry measure, all right? And so that's what they tell you about the omer. And so we finish with this. Now this is going to be the same thing as here. This is the antiquities of the Jews. All right. Now this goes into astronomy, ceremonial law, moral law, judicial law, civil punishment, ecclesiastical punishment, habits, marriages, children, dress, entertainment, rank, traveling, honor and disgrace, measures, time, commerce, warfare, but I don't see anything in particular, regarding Pentecost. Now I'm sure that it's in here, but it may take some, digging through the contents to actually uncover. So we'll forego that one. Now this is another old book, old dictionary that I like. This is the Smith Bible Dictionary. Smith Bible Dictionary. Now with the Smith Bible Dictionary, this publication, I don't have the year that this one was printed right in front of me in these pages. All right. I would give it about 1860, 1870 maybe. But I don't see the year. I'm sure the year is in here somewhere. But I don't see it. It's not something that's really available. Maybe the maps have the years on here in some small print. All right. But anyway, okay, so let's go into here and let's look up Pentecost first, and then we'll look up feasts and festivals. So in this Smith Bible Dictionary from the 1800s, which I'm sure this is 1800s, when we look up Pentecost, it tells us to look up what? Festivals. All right? So we look for the festivals, all right? And then we go into the festivals, it tells us the Feast of Weeks. It says Feast of Weeks, Greek name Pentecost, the presentation of the first ripe ears of barley. It was also the Feast of First Fruits and Feast of Harvest. The offering was made by the priest waving 2 loaves made of the best of the crop, all right, of fine wheat flour, leavened and baked, but not put on the altar, where no leaven could be placed. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 2. This feast was, I'm going to cut, in memory of the giving of the law, which we don't know that because when you count the days and when the law was given, you don't come up with 50. All right? It was the end of the harvest. Dealing with different grains and stuff. As the second day of the Passover was the first. You see that? So the second day of Passover was the first day of the harvest. Why? Because they had to wait until the sheaf offering of barley was presented to Yahweh. And then they can harvest the barley and all of the other grains. Okay? Remember, during Passover, all of the grains were destroyed before we left Egypt, before Passover happened. But they were already starting to grow. So now we have the Pentecost season when those things start to grow even more. Okay? It says, it was at the end of the Feast of Weeks, 7 times 7 days. All right? So that's showing us the Feast of Weeks. All right? That's showing us the Feast of Weeks. Now we go into, this is the Chumash, the stone edition, which contains the Chumash up there. All right? Stamped into the cover. All right? And we go into here, and we go into the book of Leviticus. We go into the book of Leviticus. Which this is a Torah with Aramaic commentary of Onkelos. So this has the Aramaic commentary on the side also that explained to the people in that living in that time period where the Torah was being read what it meant in their local language of Aramaic. Okay? So we go into and it might actually talk about it beforehand. But we go into Leviticus chapter 23. It should give us a lot more detail about it. All right? So we go into Leviticus chapter 23. Okay? And we go back. Now, it tells us from verse 11 in the Hebrew, all right? It's going to tell us, Wahagayap af ha-hamar la panya Yahweh la ratzankan macharat ha-shabat ya na yapanwa ha-kahan. All right? So for the Omer there, it says ha-hamar. Ha-hamar. All right? Like hayin, ha-hamar. Now for the explanation, which we have an explanation of what the people that study Jewish, Israelite, Hebrew literature put as the note of what this meant. Now, everything in here isn't the Bible, isn't like 100% infallible, but most of it is. Because again, most of these are written by Rashi. Rashi was born in 1040. So Rashi was born in an era when Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic weren't extinct yet, when even Arabic was at an earlier stage of development. All right, and Aramaic had been around for thousands of years. So let's see what Rashi said this meant. He says, Ma makarat ha Shabbat. All right, Ma makarat ha Shabbat. Or you could also say mi mochoreth. Mi mochoreth. Then it says ha Shabuot. Ha Shabuot. Mi mochoreth ha Shabuot. Ha Shabuot. All right. So let's see what he says that means. All right. It tells you on the morrow of the rest day. So the early Israelites did not develop this word to mean the weekly Sabbath. That's something that came later, probably from English translators. Okay? Now, if you look at the bottom right here, this has the old Rashi notes right here. Okay? Old Rashi notes. All right? So, let me know that. So it says, the morrow of the first day of Pesach. So we have Josephus. Now listen to the development. We have Josephus. Now let me actually look up, let me give you when Josephus was born. All right? And when I get that for you, I think what I'm going to do is write it, inside of the book. All right? So we will know, to the best of our knowledge. Because Josephus was around when the Roman records were around. All right? Josephus says that he was born in 37. I thought 35, but he was born in 37 AD. Right? So he was born in 37 to what? 37 to approximately 100. So 37 to approximately 100. And he had 5 sons. Okay, so Josephus lived from 37. Rashi was born in 1040. So we have 1,003 years of Hebrew people in the Eastern Hemisphere that can speak, write, and read Hebrew, 1,000 years apart from each of them, and each of them is saying, oh, the second day is Passover is when you begin the 50-day count. Now, here come these Negroes in 19-something saying, oh, these guys were wrong, we got it right, when you don't even read the Hebrew. You don't study the Hebrew. All right? So now, this is what Josephus is saying. So give me a second. Can you do me a favor and sit and read what Rashi said right here?
On the morrow of the rest day, i.e. the morrow of the first day of Pesach, which is called a rest day because ordinary work is forbidden on it. Although the word shachaf or Shabbat ordinarily refers to the Shabbat, this cannot be the case here because the verse does not specify which of the 52 Shabbats is meant.
That's a good point, right? Which Sabbath?
This term became one of the major points of controversy between the sages and the heretical Enthusians. They interpreted the term literally as referring to the Shabbat, thus claiming that the Omer had to be brought on a Sunday, the morrow of the Shabbat.
So, give a little more clarification on what you just read. So, what was the procedure that they had to do?
Count from the second day to 50 days
Count from the second day of which convocation?
of the Passover.
Right. Going into the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread are used interchangeably because the start of one and the ending of one starts the other one, and they start on the same day. All right. Now, what about the Omer? What was the procedure with the Omer?
They claim that the Omer has to be brought on a Sunday. That was the counting, the one day.
And who was saying that, Sadducees?
The heretical Ephesians,
Who?
BLETHUSIANS. I think they were sages as well.
So they were saying, this particular group was saying what?
They interpreted
Most of the Israelite community.
they interpreted the term literally and claimed that the Omer had to be brought on a Sunday after the Shabbat, the day of the Shabbat.
Was the actual priest that lived and was operating with and in the time of the temple, you know, which was Josephus. Josephus says, oh, it's talking about the 16th of Abib. So Josephus knew that, you know, when it was. And then you have Rashi coming in 1,000 years later, and he's saying, yeah, this is when you're supposed to start the count. So everybody is saying that this is when you do it. And then our people now come saying, well, no, it's supposed to be this way. Well, what do you know? Where are you getting your records from?
The irony of it is that we have two eyewitness accounts from two different time periods, not knowing each other at all, but yet confirming with the same information how they took care of the same procedure as far as the counting. So, if that's first person eyewitnesses to the counting of the days.
So yeah, so, you know, so what do we know now? You want to say something else?
Well, Rashi was not an eyewitness, but the records that he was privy to look at gave him that information as far as the counting of the days after the second day of Pesach.
All right. All right, so we see historically that it was counted as the, you know, they started from, I put this in? That it started from the 16th of Abib. That's what everybody is saying, 16th of Abib. Now, Josephus is probably the most ancient source that we have that can be trusted because he was a priest and he was actually operating during this time period, you know. So now, if we go into the Englishman's Concordance, because remember it said which Shabbat is it talking about. Let's look up the word Shabbat, all right? And again, this book right here, the Englishman's Concordance, this is a book where the entries of this book, you know, they give you like a nice little handy guide for the Hebrew, how to say the, you know, certain nouns, I mean certain verbs, vowels and stuff. Right there. And the chart right there. Okay, you got it? All right, so now, when we look at the entries in here, as you can see, the entries are in Hebrew. Entries are not in English. So you have to be able to look up the Hebrew word inside of the concordance. It's not an English concordance. It's an Englishman's Hebrew concordance because it's a Hebrew concordance for people that speak English. So they give you the word in Hebrew, and then you gotta read the word in the Hebrew, look it up in the Hebrew, and then once you look it up in the Hebrew, now it's gonna tell you what it means in the English. Okay? So now we go into the word Shabbat. We go into the word Shabbat. All right, which is going to be way at the back of the book. And I'm going to read you some of the, see, this is going to look up the words in the Hebrew that appear in the Bible, not the English. So I'm going to show you the word Shabbat, and then we're going to see how it's used in different verses. Okay? So it says Shabbat. Now it says rested, rest. Says Sabbath. It says ceased. You see that? The word Sabbath also means to cease. A cycle of something being done, and then it ceases. So we have cease. Now this is in Isaiah 14, 24 and 38. Lamentations, it says ceased. It says ceased in Lamentations 5, verse 14 and 15. Rested, all right? Cease, rested, rest. So you see how it's used. Ceased, when it says that the manna ceased, when it says that the manna ceased, the word there is Shabbat. The manna rested. All right? So we have Shabbat. All right? These are 3 Hebrew letters that are used. And some of these letters had different vowel points put into them, over the years. All right? So now it also means Sabbath. So it's interpreted exactly as Sabbath. Sabbath of rest. Well, how do you have a Sabbath of rest when rest itself means Sabbath? So you have different kinds of Sabbath that are being presented, being represented. So I just wanted to use this. Then you have Shabbaton, right? Or Shabbaton, which means rest, Sabbath, a year of rest. So you have it meaning different things also. It also means ceasing, all right? So they have this Shabbat, they have Shabbat also to be said in some of these verses, all right? Which it has a bet without a dagesh, telling you to make a V sound, but we don't do all of that. Now it begins, one begins with a shah, with a patah, and the other one begins with a shah, with a chames. So one is telling you to say shah, other one is telling you to say shaw. All right, one is telling you to say Shobath, other one is the opposite, say Shabuot. It's the opposite. So they put the sounds around with the verb sound. One gives you an aw, a different A-class vowel, and the other one gives you an ah, another A-class vowel. But you see that the word Shabbat, all these verses, is not always using it to mean the 7th day of the week. Okay, so that's the point I want to make, but that's what we're taught. Every time you see Sabbath, it means, when you see Sabbath, you think 7th day. When you see rest, you think not working, relaxing. When I see Shabbat, I think, okay, resting. When I see rest, I think resting. In other words, the English and the Hebrew words have to become synonyms in your mind when you read the Hebrew and when you read the English. But some people don't teach like that, because they don't know that the word rest or Sabbath is used in a way that's not always talking about the 7th day of the week. All right? So now we have 2 more sources we want to try to go into. Now this one is called The New Manners and Customs of the Bible. All right? Now, me personally, I like, to read from these Edomites and these Israelites that have went and studied academic records. This guy, has a master's in education from London Bible College, all right? And he's a staff inspector, and he's a religious education for Inner London Education Authority. All right, he's contributed articles. Now, all we contribute is breakdowns. We don't really have Israelite subculture of academia, to speak of. And those that do try to go in that route reject Hamashiach. Okay? So now, if we go into this book, let me look up, let's look up Shabuot. Okay? Not there, so let's look up Pentecost. Give me the cover for this, please. Pentecost. So we're going to look on page number 355. On the top shelf. Top on the left. Now it tells you in the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost, it tells you that the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost, this was a one-day, or is a one-day festival that was held in the middle of the wheat harvest. Okay? Now, they don't particularly say when the count started. Maybe they'll have it at Passover. All right, maybe Passover they'll have it. No, they don't have no Passover either. All right, so this book didn't really do us any good. All right. No, we don't have anything about that in this book. Now, go to one last source. Actually, you know what? They had some different entries in it. So let me look at the other entries. Okay. Pentecost. They also have page number 357 and 358. All right. No, they don't have anything on that one. All right, so lastly, we'll look into the this one. Everybody loves these books, right? This one's called the Torah for Dummies. The Torah for Dummies. All right, so in this Torah for Dummies, let's go into the index back here. And we're going to look for things about, now this one's probably going to have Shabuot. All right, so we'll look up Shavuot or Shabuot. All right. Shabuot. Definitions on page 303. So it tells you Shabuot. It says one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. All right. It literally means weeks. Okay. Now we also go to page number 188, and it gives us an overview. Page 188 gives us an overview. It says, 3 times a year you shall celebrate a feast to me. Exodus 23:14. 1 feast of Sukkot, 1 is Passover, and the 3rd is Shavuot. All right? Shavuot is celebrated in the month of Siwan, which is the 3rd month we're in now. Okay? During the morning service, the 10 Commandments are publicly read Following are the Torah commandments that address Shabuot. Rest and do no work. Okay? It says the holy days require special treatment. Mundane activities are inappropriate. Okay? And it says it is a day of rejoicing and festivity. It's not a regular work day, and the mood is always one of joy and celebration, as Deuteronomy 16:14 tells us. And you shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your maidservant and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within your gates. Again, Leviticus 23:21 also says, and you shall make proclamation on the same day. It shall be called holy to you, and you shall do no manner of work. It is a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. So that's what it tells us about it. So, from here, so from here, we can deduce and we can see and we can learn that one, it was celebrated on the 50th day, and that count started on the 16th of Abib. Right, the count started on the 16th of Abib. Shalom Nekah Ahmad, Pharaoh Ahmad. Peace unto you also. All right, so we can see that it started on the date. The counting started on the 16th of Abib. So we see that it started on the 16th of Abib. All right. So after that, we run into the counting time when we come into this holy day. 50 days after Passover, because your day number one started on Abib 16. All right. So now, being that you're using, Passover as your starting point. Passover is your starting point. All right. So we know that we began Passover this year on, anybody remember what day it was on the Gentiles calendar? Anybody remember? Okay, come.
April 3rd.
All right, so April 3rd. Now, in India, they began their Passover on April 4th. In East Africa, it was April 4th. Okay? Now, in West Africa and in America, it was April 3rd. Okay? So let's go into the counting of these days now. All right, so let's go to, if you got a calendar, go to your calendar, and we're gonna do, let's go to your calendar, let's look at April 3rd. And we're gonna count these days. Because you have to count, for the days of Abib. All right? You have to count for the Passover. From when it starts, and you gotta start counting from the 16th of Abib, and you have to count 50 days. All right, so we know Passover was on April 3rd. You might want to kind of clear it out as people start to come in. So you know that we started Passover on April 3rd. started Passover on April 3rd, so now that was the 15th of Abib. So the 16th of Abib would be on the night of April 4th. So April 4th would be number 1. Like the water. What was it?
It was under your notebook
On the bottom shelf?
on the table.
Oh, okay. So we got the, this is Naaman's. All right, so let's count now. So I'm gonna say the evening that we started to count, and you're gonna count from 1 to 50. Con? So I'm gonna say the date. The first date I start, you say 1. Then after that, you say 2. So we're gonna start from April 4th at sunset, which was the first day of the 50-day count. All right, the first day of the 50-day count. All right, and this is the time period that we're supposed to start for a bid, okay? All right. Are you ready? April 4th,
1,
April 5th,
2,
April 6th,
3,
April 7th,
4,
8,
5,
9,
6,
April 10th,
7,
April 11th,
8,
April 12th,
9,
April 14th,
10,
April 15th,
11,
April 16th.
12.
Did I say 15? So what are we on now?
12.
Okay, April 16th,
13,
April 17th,
14,
April 18th,
15,
April 19th,
16,
April 20,
17,
21,
18,
22,
19,
23,
20,
April 24,
21,
25,
22,
April 26,
23,
April 27,
24,
April 28,
25,
April 29,
26,
April 30,
27,
May 1,
28,
May 2,
29,
May 3rd,
30,
May 4th,
31,
May 5th,
32,
May 6th,
33,
May 7th,
34,
May 8th,
35,
May 9,
36,
May 10th,
37,
May 11th,
38,
May 12th,
39,
May 13th,
40,
May 14th,
41,
May 15th,
42,
May 16th,
43,
May 17th,
44,
May 18th,
45,
May 19th,
46,
May 21st,
47,
May 21st,
48,
May 23rd,
49. No, 50.
Still 49 now. And in this corner, May 23rd.
50,
All right. So May 23rd at sun. What are you shaking your head no about? May 23rd at sunset is the 50th day. And for all the brothers over in India and in East Africa, May 23rd was what day? What, okay, so May 23rd for East Africa and India,
49.
49,
and May 24th at sunset In India and in Asia, India, and East Africa will be Pentecost. Okay, so now we've counted the Omer, all right, or the Hamad, right? We've counted the Hamad. So now we've counted all of the 50 days for the Western Hemisphere, and then we kind of just skip some numbers for the Eastern Hemisphere, right? Right, so that's the mitzvah, all right, to count the days for the Feast of Weeks. All right, so we've done that, all right? So if we look in the book again, right, the book that gives you the little small Sapar Sadwar, all right, the small Sapar Sadwar, all right, Sapar Sadwar Quatan, all right, in this book again, we have, several scriptures, and we have several scriptures and several historical points for this day that we're on now. All right, so we have the book now. We have the book. So again, we went into this yesterday. All right, we went into it yesterday. And again, remember, the information that we have inside of the Torah section is based on the articles of belief, article number 5 and article number 6 for the articles of belief of Yasharahla, all right, and articles of belief for Banya Yasharahla, that the government is bound to enforce and respect and honor and uphold, the government being Masharah Yasharahla. So we can't enforce the laws of the Torah if you got people on a council that are supposed to be enforcing the Torah that believe in different interpretations of Torah, where, remember Yahweh said, if you break this holy day, if you eat on the Day of Atonement, that was a capital offense. So you can't have people sitting there in brotherhood and unity that are keeping the feast of the Day of Atonement, a day of fasting, keeping it on different days. That's just spirit of confusion. And everybody's compromising. Well, you do it your way, and I'll do it my way. And then we'll come together later, and we'll figure out how to do something together. No, that's wickedness. That's sin. Okay, that's sin. That's why in article number 6, all right, of the, article number 6 for the articles of belief, which will, we'll try to bring them out real quick. All right. So article number 6 for the articles of belief. All right. So I'm gonna read it to you. Let me try to get it first. All right. All right. Now this version is current as of March 3rd, 2023. So let me read it. For the purpose of prayer, worship, obedience, exhortation, edification, and instruction, each male is commanded by Yahweh to appear in Jerusalem in holy convocation 3 times a year. In the Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the Feast of Weeks, and in the Feast of Tabernacles. Additionally, memorial of blowing of trumpets and Day of Atonement must be kept as holy days. All convocations shall be kept. All convocations shall be at a time and place as determined by empirical means by Yasharahla Office of Calendar or other such competent authority. All right? Moreover, we are commanded by Yahweh to observe the 7th day of rest, Shabbat, as holy and convocational throughout our generations for a perpetual covenant and a sign between Yahweh and us. 6 days may work be done, but the 7th day of the week is a Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. The weekly Sabbath of rest begins at dark sunset, astronomical sunset, on the 6th day of the week, so-called Friday, and shall end at dark sunset, astronomical sunset, of the 7th day of the week, so-called Saturday, in a constant pattern of 7 days. During the holy Sabbath, we shall read and study the Torah, engage ourselves in the gospel and the words of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and we shall refrain from satisfying debts, buying and selling, work, and the like. We shall appear with others at a set time and place in holy convocation as commanded by Yahweh. On the 7th day, Yahweh ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And Yahweh blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Yahweh created and made. We will not use fire for food, nor for work, nor use electricity and vehicles which use boiling water or fire to generate energy. The new month, new moon, is observed on the day of the inferior conjunction as a day of rest and worship, without buying and selling of goods nor services. All holy feasts and holy convocations for these days are observed in clean places. The crescent moon and white moon are not used for the new moon. Sabbath is not determined by the moon. So this is a concise belief summary that we hold as the government of Israel and the chosen of Israel. Okay? So now, with that in mind, when we talk about the new moon, when we talk about the Feast of Weeks, this is what we're talking about. We're not just talking about something that, you know, somebody we learned and been doing for 10 years. This has always been the way that we've done it. This is the way that King Masha, all right, kept the new moon, and the way the new moon was taught under his authority. Okay? So, we have to be very careful when it comes to our soul, because the information that people give to us, you know, isn't always the best information. All right? So now what we can do is we can read some of the verses, and then we'll shut down for the day. Probably got a total, looks like maybe about 11 verses, maybe 15 to read. All right, so let's read Exodus chapter 17, chapter 20, verse 1 through 17 first. All right, let's read Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17 first. So let's just run through that in the English real quick. Let's go ahead and read that. Everybody got it? Read it together.
And Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh the Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh thy Elohim in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but on the seventh day is the Shabuot of Yahweh thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in it, and rested on the seventh day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings
and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking.
And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. Come, hallelujah. And right now, we're reading the Hebrew real quick. Wayadabar al-hayamal ad-kal hadabaryam ha'al-hala-amal Nakia Yahweh Al-Hayeka Ashira Hawatzat Yakamaratza Matazariam Mabaya Habaryam La Yahya Laka Lahayamakaryam Al-Panya La Tagasha Laka Pasal Wala Wakal Thamawana Ashara Bashamayam Mamahal wa Ashara Baratza Matachat wa Ashara Bamayam Matachat La Aratza La Tasha La Hawa Laham Wala Tahabadam Kaya Anakya Yahau Anachya Yahau Alahayaka Alakwana Pakwal Awan Abath Alabanyam Al Shalashyam Wahala Rabahayam La Shanaaya Wahasha Hasad La Alapyam Wa La Ahabaya La Wa La Shamarya Matzawatya La Tasha'a Atsham Yahweh Alahayacha La Shawa'akaya La Yanakwa Yahweh at Ashara Yasha'a at Shamwa La Shawa Zakawat at Yawam Hashabat La Kwadashwa Shashak Yamayam Tahabad Wa Ashyat Kala Mala'achatka Wa Yawam Ha Shabayaha Ya Shabath La Yahweh Alahayaka La Tahasha Khala Malahaka Atta Wabanka Wabathka Habadka Wa Abathka Wabahamatcha, Wagarcha, Asharah Masharah Kaya Shashat Yamaya Hasha Yahweh At Hashamayam Wa At Ha'aratza At Hayam Wa At Chal Asharah Bam Wayanach Bayawam Hashabyaya Alkan Barad Yahawa At Yawam HaShabbat Wayakwadashawa Kabad At Abayaka Wa At Amacha Lamahan Ya Arabwan Yamaya Kahala Ha-Adama Ashara Yahweh Alahayakha Natan Laka La'a Taratzach La'a Tanab La'a Taganab La'a Tahana Baraka Rad Shakwar La'atach Tachamad Bayat Vrahaka La'atach Hamad Ashath Vrahaka Wahabad Amata Shawad Hamad Wachal Asharahla Raka. Alright, so that's Psalms, that's Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 through 17, aka the 10 Commandments, chapter 20, verse 1 through 17. Right now, let's go to Exodus. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23, verse 14 through 19, real quick. Exodus 23, 14 through 19. Let's read it together. Sing song. Exodus chapter 23, verse 14 through 19. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in a year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, and the time appointed in the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labor, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labor out of the field. 3 times in the year shall all meals shall appear before Banya Yahweh. Thou shalt not offer the blood of the sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of Yahweh thy Elohim. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. All right. Exodus 34, verse 22 to 26. Exodus 34, verse 22 to 26. Thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Thrice in the year shall all your men, children, appear before Banya Yasharahla, the Alahaya of Yasharahla. For I will cast off the nations before thee, and enlarge thy borders. Neither shall any man desire thy land. When thou shalt go up to appear before Yahweh Alahayaka thrice in the year, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, neither shalt thou the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left until the morning. The first of the first fruits of the land
Thou
shalt
shalt bring unto the house of Yahweh thy
Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. Leviticus 23, verse 9 through 14. Leviticus 23, verse 9 through 14. And Yahweh spake unto Mashah, saying, Speak unto Banya Yasharahla, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest, and ye shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to accept it for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, and ye shall offer that day. When ye wave the sheaf and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Yahweh, and the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto Yahweh for a sweet savor, and the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the fourth part of an hin, and ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day that ye have brought the offering unto Yahweh. It shall be a statute forever throughout all your dwellings, generations, and all your dwellings. So understand that when we had the Passover, we were eating unleavened bread. The bread that we were eating was made from fresh ground bread. We grounded up the grain. All right, we took the ears and the grains and we roasted them and we ate them. If you wait until the first week to keep the Passover, to keep the offering of the sheaf offering unto Yahweh, if Passover begins on Sunday, you don't have no fresh grain that you're eating for the whole feast. That's how you know it had to be on the 16th of Abib. And once the 16th of Abib came in, we could grind up that fresh harvest that we just brought in. So if you waiting until, the Passover, the 16th of Abib, you can still do the fresh grains for the whole feast. But if you're waiting for the first day of the week, and Passover starts on the first day of the week, that means that the day after the Sabbath, which would be the Passover, or if you're looking at the weekly Sabbath, if Passover starts on the first day of the week, and then you wait until the day after the Sabbath, if you wait until the day after the Sabbath, that means the weekly Sabbath is going to be over, and then you going into the first of the week now. Everybody's going home now. Nobody's there. So the math does not add up for you to wait until the actual weekly Sabbath after the Passover, because the Passover, some of them years, the Passover will be over when you're trying to now offer something. And you don't harvest, you're not going to be harvesting any grain. No fresh grains for Passover. You think the Bible would mention something where every 7 years for Passover you won't be able to eat the fresh grain. But that's literally what happens if you say, well, we're going to wait for Passover to the Sabbath. And then listen, it says the following Sabbath. So if you wait until that weekly Sabbath, you're not going to be able to offer no grains or eat fresh grains during the whole Passover feast. And the feast is called the Feast of Unleavened what? Bread. So how are you going to eat the bread if you can't even harvest and eat the bread that you just got out of the ground growing because you're waiting on a weekly Sabbath? No, the Sabbath that's talking about, as we see in history, is the Sabbath of what? The Sabbath of the annual Passover. Okay? So let's go into Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 9 through 12. Verses 9 through 12. And it says, 7 weeks shalt thou number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Yahweh thy Elohim, with a tribute of a free will offering of thine hand, which thou shalt give unto Yahweh thy power, according as Yahweh thy power has blessed thee. And thou shalt rejoice, right? And thou shalt rejoice before Yahweh thy power, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite that is within thy gates, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are among you, in the place which Yahweh thy power hath chosen to place his name there. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. All right, now verses 16 and 17. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yahweh thy power, in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yahweh empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Yahweh thy power, which he has given unto thee. So when it says don't appear before him empty, it means you're supposed to bring your tithes to Jerusalem at these feast days too. Right? You brought your tithes there. So you didn't appear empty, meaning you brought what was given unto you from Yahweh. That's what it says, according to the blessing that he has given you. All right? In Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 17. Right? And it also tells you 7 weeks. That means 7 periods of counting 7. Oh, wow. All right. So, yeah, so you see that, you know, the blessing that he would give you would be, you know, talking about the crops, right? And the feast days, the food and the grains and stuff. And it tells you, you must come to celebrate the pilgrimage festivals with offerings in honor of the occasion. These should include festive peace offerings, an elevation offering to mark the person's appearance at the temple, commensurate with the prosperity which Yahweh has blessed him. All right? So that's what we would do. All right, so now we can go into we read Deuteronomy already. All right. So now we'll conclude by reading Acts chapter 2. All right. So Acts chapter 2, we'll read that. All right, Acts chapter 2. So go ahead and let's let's see, Acts chapter 2, start reading when you get it.
And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place.
So this is talking about the apostles, all right, which they call the 11 apostles. All right, talking about the 12 disciples. All right, and also Matthew was there. All right, go ahead.
And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there
Now this is, imagine you sitting in the house and you hear this going on. When you read these verses, the way you can really keep somebody from having to stop every part of the verse and explain it is just picture what's happening. Picture yourself being there or seeing exactly what's happening. Picture being in a room and you hear a sound from heaven, from the sky, which means that it's coming to you, it's getting louder and louder as it comes to you, but you hear it's coming from the skies. And it sounds like a wind, and that sound coming to fill the house. How would that wind sound? So picture these things in your spirit as we read them. Go ahead.
And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire.
Now we know in Acts, we know in Psalms chapter 104, 104 verse 3, that he maketh his angels, all right, he makes his angels like fire, all right. 104, 103, 104 verse 4, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire. So the Holy Spirit was working through the angels, and the angels went to these men under the direction of the Holy Spirit of Ruach HaKodesh, or Ruach HaKodesh, and gave these men instant understanding of these other languages. Instant understanding. All right? So this is the angels working with the Holy Spirit on this particular event. All right, go ahead.
And it sat upon each of them, and they were all filled with the Holy Spirit.
So they were filled with the Holy Spirit. Go ahead.
And began to speak with other tongues.
Which means other languages were instantly understood by them. Go ahead.
As the Spirit gave them utterance.
Which means that the Holy Spirit gave them the ability to understand or to speak in these different languages. Go ahead.
And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews.
They were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews. All right. Now they were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews. Now remember, when we see this word Jews, it also includes the people from Esther chapter 8 verse 17 that started to keep the Torah as long, along with the Israelites. Go ahead and let's go there real quick. Go to Esther. Go to Esther chapter 8 verse 17 real quick. Esther 8:17. Let's go there real quick. All right, let's go there real quick. Esther 8:17. You sleeping? Are you sleeping? Huh? Anybody got it yet? If you got it, read it.
And in every province.
And what?
And in every province.
And in every province, go ahead.
And in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came.
And in every province and in every city, read again. And in every province and in every city,
Whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came.
Whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came. Go ahead.
The Jews
had joy. Go ahead.
and gladness.
Joy and gladness. Read on. Let's see what it's talking about. Because a lot of Israelites are in denial.
A feast and a good day.
A feast and a good day. Go ahead.
And many of the people.
Go ahead.
Of the land.
These are the ones that were not the bad guys. These are the ones that were not trying to murder and kill the Israelites. These are the ones that said, you know what, that ain't right, I'm not participating in that. Because why? All the ones that tried to kill us, what happened to them? They got killed. So who's left? The ones that didn't try to kill us. The ones that had no problem with us. So many people of the land did what? Became Jews. For the fear of the Jews did what? Fell upon them. So many people became Jews because the fear of us came upon them. So that's the first generation. So now what's going to happen to that second generation? To the third generation? Now they locked into the zone because they've been raised this way. They've been going to the synagogues. They've been learning the Torah. They've been learning the history. All right, and this is BC. All right, this is a long, long time ago. I think it's like, what, 300, 400s BC. This is over 2,300 years ago. We know that. It's over 2,300 years ago. These Gentiles saw the Israelites, and they were afraid of the Israelites, and they said, what does Jew mean? Yahweh means what? Yahweh is praised. So they didn't become Jews in the sense of the descendants of Judah, but people forget what Jew means. It says they became Jews, not Israelites. So a Jew is a person that praises Yahweh. That's what the word literally means, Yahweh. It means Yahweh is praised. So they became, many people of the land became someone that praised Yahweh, that walked in the ways of a person that praises Yahweh, or to be more specific, that praises Yah. All right, keep reading. Were you reading that? In Acts?
Acts chapter 2.
All right, so keep reading in Acts. So it says, Jews, go ahead.
Devout men.
Devout men, go ahead.
Out of every nation under heaven.
So from every nation under the heaven. Now let me ask you a question. How are you going to have Jews there from every nation under heaven if you have this supposed people that are Israelites that don't know they're Israelites? There goes that doctrine, or whatever it's talking about Gentiles, it's talking about Israelites that didn't know who they were. If we were in every nation under heaven, how can the people not know that they're Israelites? If we're scattered everywhere, you think it was just, there was no mutt race back then, no mystery people. Everybody had a lineage. We're talking 2,000 years ago. How are the Israelites going to be targeted for slavery, captivity, and bondage if nobody knows who they are or where they are? That's how you know who they were. They were Israelites. They knew they were Israelites, and people came to put them in slavery. Even going into Mali in the 15th century, in the 1400s, they knew who the Israelites were, but they had converted to Islam, but they still maintained their Israelite identity. Even the conversos that you want to read about in Spain and Portugal. Even some of the people in Yemen converted, but they still knew they were Israelites. All right, go ahead.
Now when this was noised abroad,
That means everybody started hearing what was going on. Go ahead.
the multitude came together. And
The
were
whole crowd that was gathered at Jerusalem for this feast day, they said, we need to come together and figure this thing out. Go ahead.
and were confounded,
They were confused. Why?
because that every man had heard them speak in his own language.
Everybody could hear the disciples speaking in other languages. Languages that they never learned. Read.
And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, Are not all these which speak Galileans?
These were the disciples from Galilee. And the Galileans, that was in the northern part of Israel, by Naphtali's province, Zebulun, Naphtali, ancient territory, by the Sea of Galilee. And they were, kind of small town people. They didn't have major education centers in that part of Jerusalem at that time. So these were small town people. But the Most High took these small town people, these country boys, as we would say, or campesinos, los del campo, from the campo, campesinos, from the country, farm boys, right? Talking built men that could wrestle an ox to the ground, grab him by the horn. All right, so these were country boys, so they weren't looked at as far as high in society members. Okay.
And how hear we, every man in our own tongue?
But on the day of Pentecost, which is today, they heard everybody speaking in one of the languages of the people that was there. Read.
Parthians and Medes.
People from Parthia, from Mede, go ahead.
And Elamites.
Elamites.
And the dwellers in
What is
Mesopotamia.
an Elamite? What is an Elamite? Is an Elamite an Israelite that lived in Elam? See, you want to read this verse and say, oh, Elam is talking about Israelites in Elam. But every time you read Edomites, it's an Edomite. When you read Moabite, it's a Moabite. But when you read Ruth the Moabitess, oh, that's talking about a woman that was living in Moab. How do you distinguish that? If the Hebrew suffix is a yod and a tawah for the feminine suffix belonging to Moab, how do you determine that well, she's an Israelite now? Just looking at the language in the Hebrew and the context. You got to really deny everything that's in that chapter to say she's an Israelite. You got to deny what it's saying. You can't take it for what it literally is saying. You got to go into another book, another chapter, and now say this is why we will call the Israelites by a separate name. Her, not Naomi, right? Not Naomi's husband or her husband's sons or her sons. None of them were called Moabites. Only Ruth was called. What's so special about her? And why was she an Israelite that went back? Why was she still? Now I'm not getting into the politics of it. But I'm asking, why weren't the other ones? Oh, because they were born in Israel. Okay, well, you want to say that. Well, who's these Elamites? Where did they come from? And how can I find that doctrine in the Bible? You see? So it calls these people Elamites. But they were all, most of them are under Gentile-controlled regions. But this is saying Elamites. So we got one of two options, both of which still leave a question mark today. Either we have actual Elamites that were keeping the Torah in Jerusalem, or we have Israelites that were living amongst Elamites, living in Elam territory, that were called Elamites. Either way, I'm sure they did not have a large population of Israelite women to have babies with. We see that from Ruth. What did Jacob do? What did Joseph do? He married the woman of the land where he was living. So what's the point that I'm making is this. When we look at these Elamites, we still have an isolated community of people that believe in the Torah that are accepted in the first century as Jews that were living in Elam land. Not only that were living in Medes. That's going to be around the territory where you have, is it a coincidence that all these places now have communities of people that say that they're Israelites? The Medes area, that would be around like Armenia and then going into the Kurdish territories. And you have Kurdish so-called Jews. You have Israelites that are in Western India that call themselves Jews, most prominently being in Kerala. All right? Elamites, and what?
And the dwellers in Mesopotamia.
That's parts of Iran, parts of Iraq, when you have people there that historically were called Jews also. So it's giving you a geographic map of the diaspora, showing you, there's Israelites in these communities that believed in HaMashiach and believed in the Torah. Go ahead.
And in Judea.
Judea, people from Judea. What are people from Judea called? Jews. So why does it make, if everybody was a Jew whose origins were in Judea, they're also pointing out that you had these people that were also called Jews that were living in other areas also. Now this next one is going to blow your mind. Well, not blow your mind, but go ahead.
In Cappadocia.
Cappadocia is where? That's in Turkey. That's in Turkey. Go ahead.
In Pontus.
Pontus. All this is Asia Minor. Go ahead.
And Asia.
Now Asia is talking about the other areas of Asia, or it can be talking about the areas of Asia that's what they call Asia Minor. Go ahead.
Phrygia.
Go ahead.
And Pamphylia. In Egypt and in parts of Libya about Cyrene.
Mm-hmm.
And strangers of Rome.
Strangers of Rome, meaning strangers that were from Rome. Now, even if everything I'm saying is false, if all of these people were Israelites, none of them were real, none of them were no Gentiles. Let's keep reading. Strangers of what?
Strangers of Rome.
So why they calling them strangers? That's the first question. Now let's compare and contrast. We have Judea, they were dwelling at Jerusalem, Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. See, you want to stop there, but let's keep reading. Let's keep reading and see what else it says. Keep reading.
Jews.
Now it talks about Jews again, and what?
And proselytes.
And proselytes. What's a proselyte? What's a proselyte? Do you know what a proselyte is? What's a proselyte?
A Gentile that started to worship Yahweh.
A proselyte is a Gentile that starts to worship Yahweh. As opposed to a Jew who's born into it. It's in his blood. He got to do it. But there's another guy that comes from Elam or Cappadocia or Asia Minor that says, you know what? I want to worship your God too. So you have all these examples here and in Esther and everybody, no. Those are Israelites. How are they Israelites? It says that the Jews and then people became Jews. Who are these people that became Jews if they living amongst the Jews in the exile? Keep going.
Crete.
Crete, where's Crete? Crete is an island in the Mediterranean. And who?
And Arabians.
And Arabia. Arabians. Those are so-called Arabs. Arabians. 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 Arabs. So these people that are from Saudi Arabia, Yemen, people that were from Oman, United Arab Emirates, those places there now. And that's where they started at. That's the family of Ishmael. So the Arabians, so there were some Arabs. All right, now, the interesting part is that the Arabs were, the Arabs talked about all throughout the Old Testament, and here we see them in the New Testament. And these Arabs were where? They were at Jerusalem. What language did the Arabs speak in the first century? Who can tell me? Begins with an N. N-A. N-A-B. N-A-B-A. Nabatean, correct. They were speaking, most of them were speaking Nabatean. And some of the Arabs had left from down south, and what territory did they take over? Did they use as a worship center up until the 8th century AD? They took over in Jordan, South Jordan. Ishmael took over South Jordan, and that area became Petra, became the Arab headquarters. Because Esau moved from up out of there. He moved to Rome and Greece. He moved into bigger and better places, man. So now the Arabs said, well, we're going to take over this area over here. So a lot of those buildings you see erected from the stone, Esau did some of them, and then the Arab or the Ishmaelites did the other ones, did some of them also. Okay. So it says what? It says Arabians, go ahead.
We do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of Allah.
So they were speaking the languages of the Arabians, of the Cretes, of the Latin from the Romans, all right? And even there could have been a distinction between how the people from Galilee talked, distinct from how the people in Jerusalem talked. That's why they say what? Your speech betrays you. When they're talking about the Israelites, they say your speech betrayeth you. All right? Your speech betrayeth you. Because they had a different accent. Because the people in Israel had started to combine, in southern Israel, they had started to combine more Aramaic with the Hebrew. And probably some Latin words too. But up in where they were from in Galilee, the language was more preserved. It didn't have as much Gentile influence. So at some point, they would have said maybe Yahawashi or Yahawashah. Then from some point it went from that to Yahawashah. Then it went to the Aramaic Yeshua or Yehoshua, Yehoshua, and then from there it went to Yeshu. Yeshu, and they find this in the archaeology even now. The archaeology is still out there. And from Yeshu, they put it in the Greek and said Jesus. And then from Jesus, they went to Jesus. And from Jesus went to Jesus. So Jesus does not come from Zeus. That is an academic fallacy. Jesus, the word, does not come from the word Zeus. Because the word Zeus in Greek is not pronounced with a Z in that position of the word. It's pronounced with a TH. Thus, not Zeus. And when did all this stuff happen? Everybody's saying, well, this would happen. Who did it when? Show me in the records that these people came in and put in Zeus's name and nobody noticed it. Nobody said nothing about it. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody tried to stop them. No, it didn't happen like that. It was a denigrating, a de-evolving, or an evolving backwards or downward of the Hebrew language that led us to Jesus, that led us to Jesus, that led us to Jesus, that came from Yeshu. And then Yeshua, right? And then from Yeshua, coming from Yehoshua, then from that, all of that going back there, right? Yahawashah. Now you can say Yahawashah, and they put the H sound on the end of it because people had lost that guttural. So the last part of the name was the Alim. But there's a sound for the A in Alim, and that sound is like Alim. But people lost the guttural, so they had to replace that guttural and put that A. So now they're saying Yehoshua, because they stopped saying Yehoshua. But they left the A there to keep some semblance of the original word Yehoshu. And after that wawa, all right, that wawa and the sheen or the shan, all right, Yehosh, and then they put the u and the a. But the U, we know, comes from the wow. All right? And that wow was early on in the word. But anyway, we're not going to get into that right now. So now we see that you know, they were talking, you know, different, they were talking different languages. They had different ways of pronouncing, you know, different words. And when they pronounced these words differently, that gave them a whole different vernacular in the north of Galilee. So these disciples from Galilee, following Hamashiach, they spoke a different dialect of the Hebrew. So even in this one, when you read the book of Acts, and you read the New Testament, read Matthew, you see that there was a dialect difference. And that's why they say, your speech betrays you. We know you from Galilee because how you talk. I mean, people from New York and people from California, we speak the exact same English, but we say the words differently. Well, when I say the word C-A-R, you're not going to hear R. And when I say car, not no hard R. In California, they might say car. And coming from other parts of the country, you're going to hear my car or car. You're not going to hear everybody saying the same, but we all know what that word means. But if we're going to say the word properly, we'll say car. Short for what? Carriage. So we're going to say car. Some people say vehicle. Vehicle. Some people say vehicle. Right? But it's the same word. We understand, I don't have a vehicle. I don't have a vehicle. You don't have no vehicle. And then when you go to Jamaica or Belize, that same English word is going to be pronounced even differently. The accent is going to be different. All right? Little, little. When I say little, you don't hear the T. You hear little. You hear little. Somebody would say little. All right? In some countries, they'll say little, but it's the same word. So the dialect changed when you went from the north of Israel to the south of Israel. Nobody says, I don't know. Most people say, I don't know. Nobody pronounces the D in I don't know. Usually, when you talk informally, you might say, I don't know. You might say, I don't know. You know, give or take. I don't know, I don't know. But I don't know is how we say I don't know. Sometimes. But by the 600s and the 800s, when they put the Hebrew down and put the vowel points, we don't know if that's how it was spoken, you know, 800 years before that. We don't know if that's how it was spoken 1,100 years before that, toward the end of the Babylonian captivity, which started in 586 when we left Jerusalem, 586, and then from 586 to the 900s when it was codified, 900s to the thousands, that's 1,500 years. Really, are we really saying that it didn't change? The captivities, the Gentile influence? No. So at the day of Pentecost, the miracle was that Yahweh said, everybody's going to be able to understand. Everybody's going to hear my words in their own language. Why? Because he gave the disciples the ability to speak in other languages. I keep reading.
And they were all amazed and were in doubt, saying one to another, what meaneth this? Others mocking said, these men are full of new wine.
Go ahead.
But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, ye men of Judea, and all ye that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words. For these are not drunken, as ye suppose, seeing it is but the 3rd hour of the day.
That means that in ancient times, most people didn't rise up and be drunk by 9 o'clock a.m.
Right.
Most people can't say the same now. I know brothers used to wake up. First thing they do when they wake up is either you know, grabbed that 40 ounce of OE that they put in the freezer before they laid down, and then woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, took it out the freezer, put it in the refrigerator,
Right.
all right, or put it on the countertop, and then started drinking it as soon as they got out of bed. All right. So he's saying nobody's drunk. Go ahead.
But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel.
So you can go from verse 17 all the way to 47, and you can read what Peter understood was happening based on the prophecies, because we're not going to read it right now. And another thing that you need to try to read also is going to be the book of Ruth, because the book of Ruth takes place during the harvest of the grains. So you want to try to read that chapter also during the wheat harvest, the grain harvest. All right? You want to try to read that also. All right? So that's going to wrap it up for today. You know, Shalom Deidre. Kadashalah said, Matthew 15, but he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be rooted up. All right, so all praise to Yahweh. All right, if we got any questions or comments from anybody, let's go ahead and bring them out now.
Shalom. Thank you for the lesson. And Shalom Zaquan wa Masharah. And then someone said a while ago, Matthew 15, verse 13. But he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up.
Okay, I think that was Kadashalah. I did that. Well, he shared it in here.
Well, that's it.
Okay. All right. All right, all praise to the Most High. All right, all praise to Yahweh. All right, Kwam El-Ek Ben Israel said a great lesson for Wada. Okay, all praise to Yahweh. Ayandabar, Ayandabar. All right, appreciate that. All right, so now for one final entry, we'll go into the we'll look up Pentecost again. All right. Let's look under the feast, and we'll read the definition again. All right. All right. It says the feast of Pentecost. Again, this is the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. This is a lot of you Israelites' favorite dictionary. This and the Josephus. So we read in the Josephus that everybody uses. We read in Josephus that the 16th of Abib, no matter what day of the week it fell upon, that's when we started counting the 50 days. And we've already established that you cannot do what the scriptures say if Passover begins on the first day of the week. Because if Passover begins on the first day of the week, and you start to, and you're using the weekly Sabbath, you're going to be all the way into, the next week. If you want to be technical, why am I saying that? Because it says tomorrow after the Sabbath. So now if you want to say the Sabbath is talking about the weekly Sabbath, tomorrow after the Sabbath is going to be on that Sunday, which now, if Passover began on the first day of the week, it ends on the seventh day. So now you're going to be trying to do a grain offering that ain't going to take place during Passover. Passover ends. So once Passover ends, you can't do these things anymore. So that's how you know that Sabbath is talking about the first holy day of that celebration. And then on the 16th of Abib, you brought your sacrifices. You brought your grain offering. The priest on our behalf did the grain offering. It says in Zondervan Bible Dictionary under feast, the Feast of Pentecost or Feast of Weeks was celebrated 50 days after the Passover. See, y'all want to go into the Zondervan, this is what they want to do. All right, this is what they want to do. They want to go into this. Show you what you want to do. This is what they want to use Zondervans for.
Oh.
All right. Use it for this one.
Come.
Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. They want to use it to say, see, the Negroes are a different nation than the Hamites. Ham is the father of the dark races, but not the Negroes, who are dark people but don't come from Ham. See that, and this is very true. There's nothing wrong with that. But now when you got the same Zondervan telling us the same thing, that a black man who is Josephus was a black man. Josephus, if he was living today, would be called a limber. He'd be called a limber, or he would be called a Haitian. So a black man, which was a general born approximately 37 AD, approximately 4 years after Hamashiach went into the heavens, went back into the 4th dimension, so you can understand. This man wrote that the 16th of Abib, the day after Passover, is when we started to count unto Pentecost. So now you got the black man and the white man who learned from the black man, who learned from Josephus, telling you the same thing. And you still gonna say, nope, nope, I understand this verse properly. You don't read the Hebrew in order to understand properly. All right? When it says after the Sabbath, it's talking about after the rest. And when it says count 7 Sabbath, it means count 7 rest periods. If you start a song at C, and then you say you have 7 rests, when you go to the next octave, you're not going to go to D or E, you're going to go to C. And if you started at A, you're going to go to A on the 5th octave, A on the 4th octave, A on every octave, you're going to rest. If you're resting on the octaves, all right, on that particular note. So the note is the 16th of Abib. And then that's the first day, and you count 7 days after that. And then you start counting again. Just like the Feast of Weeks. I mean, the Feast of Jubilees, which is 50 years. All right? It was 7 years. All right? So now it tells us that the feast lasted 1 day and marked the completion of the wheat harvest, at which 2 loaves of bread made from the new grain were offered to Yahweh. That means, how are you going to even offer this new grain to Yahweh if you didn't even do a harvest yet? You offered it after the Passover. Again, it was Banya Yasharahla that brought out this understanding that you cannot observe the Feast of Weeks properly for the sheave offering count unless you do it on the 16th of Abib. Why? Because if the week ended, I don't know where he got it from. Maybe he originated it, I don't know. But if Passover starts on the first day of the week, and the Sabbath is talking about the weekly Sabbath, you cannot offer that bread during Passover. Because if you're waiting for the first day of the week, Yom Rishon, you got Passover starting on Yom Rishon, all right? And if Passover ends on the 6th day, the 7th day of the week, the next Yom Rishon that you try to offer this bread, the month is going to be over. The Passover celebrations are going to be over. So you couldn't have done it that way. It had to be talking about the Sabbath of the Passover, all right? And then you go to the next day, which is the 16th of Abib, and that's what began your 14-day count. Okay? That's what began your 14-day count. So you got black people, white people, all right? You got black Jews from the 1st century. You got black men that's from France in the 11th century. And then you have Edomites from these modern times all telling you the same thing. And when you read the Hebrew, you'll see it for sure. And you'll see how the word Shabbat is used different places, different ways. Just like you see how the word Ba'ar is used, or Ba'ir is used different ways in different places, which is really Ba'ar. If you want to get into guttural, which we need to, the guttural and glottal sounds of the Hebrew. All right, so that's where we are now. And that's why we're celebrating it now. So the brothers that say, oh, we got to wait until what? Sunday the 28th, right? 28th or 27th at night, all right? Them brothers are going off. They're going off. They're not studying enough. And you know it because a lot of people that come with these strange things are not students of the Torah. Once you become a student of the Torah, you will understand the Messiah better. You definitely must understand the Hebrew better because you see the value of reading it in its original language to get a better and clear understanding of what it's talking about. You have to read it in its original format, understand it. It may sound strange to you, but if you read Genesis 1:1, when it says Bereshit or Bereshit, when you read it as it's written, it says in the feminine head, in the head of the woman. That's literally what it says. Ba is in, Ra'ash is head, and Yath is a feminine suffix. Yath. Or eat. Bereshit. Beresh is head, and eat. Beresh. All right, and then eat is a feminine suffix for whatever word it's attached to. So it means in the feminine head. So now we're in a deeper meaning and we're moving into what? Chakma. Because Chakma is where everything started at. So she is the head where all this creation started at, took place at. She went through everything. You can read in Revelation, you can read in Proverbs, you can read in Proverbs chapter 8, and it gives you the breakdown on how she went through everything that was created. But reading in English, you like, well, in the beginning. So and you have a whole lesson about in the beginning. But what does in the beginning mean? You see? Because Genesis is different. Genesis is a concept that takes place within the origin point of something. And it's rather ambiguous. But in the Hebrew, by the Ashel or Bereshit, it tells you exactly where everything's starting at. And it's starting with wisdom. It's starting with wisdom. But you don't see it in the English. You don't see it in the Spanish. You only see it in the Hebrew. And you only see it in the Hebrew when you look at the Hebrew and you break down what the components are of the word. Ba, Ra'ash, and Yath. And you break down those three components. And then you have a much better understanding. So these people that are telling us that Passover is on this day, and then you begin counting on the first Sunday after Passover, after the Sabbath, they're not looking at the whole concept, nor have they investigated the ancient sources that tell us how we did these things. Okay? Now, they may have a leg to stand on, but with us available to help them, they don't have a leg to stand on now as to why they will be doing it the wrong way. All right? So that's going to be it for today. I don't know if there's anything, any questions, you know. All right. We have another statement, Kwamelech Ben Israel. So glad y'all said Yom Rishon, but please elab so that peeps will begin replacing them Roman, Greek, and anglicized foreign god name days. Yom Rishon means the head day, or the beginning day. Yom Rishon means the beginning day, all right? And then you have, you know, the second day of the week, the third day of the week. So you gotta just look, even though everybody may disagree with the pronunciation of the Hebrew, but I guarantee you this. If I say 4 as Arby, and I say Wednesday as Arby, that's a hell of a lot better than the day of Odin. A hell of a lot better than the day of Odin. Speak whatever your crooked, straight, professional, academic, hood, Ebonics Hebrew is. Speak the Taimani, Sephardic, all right, Sephardic or the Ashkenazi. Speak whatever brand of Hebrew you're going to speak to me, if that's going to keep you from saying the day of Odin. All right? There, you say 6, Shalishi. You can say Shalishi. You say Shalayashia. You can say 3. You can say 3. Even though in the scripture we don't see Yom Rishon, we see Yom Achad, Yom Achad. We see Yom Achad in the scripture, but we can say Yom Rishon. We know what we mean. We know Rishon or Ra'ash is used in Exodus chapter 13 for the beginning of the year. The beginning is the beginning of the week. All right? So give me Shabbat, or give me Yom Shavi, give me a V, or give me a B, give me anything but Saturday. Give me Shabbat, give me 7th day. All right? Give me 7. Listen to 7. Sev, Sheb, Shav, Shab. You see that? So does 7 itself even come from Shabbat? Probably so. Because we already seen how Shabbat is rest, but then they put the vowel points and they take off the bet sin, mixing English and Spanish. They take off the bet without the dagesh and say shavat or shevat. And they say that means rest, Shabbat. All right, but Shabbat, all right, with the patah under the shin, all right, and then with the kamatz under the bet, and then a thought is supposed to be what? With those sounds there, with those A-class vowels, it would be Shaboth. Shabbat. But Shabbat or Yom Shabbat, Yom Shabbat is a lot better than Saturday. But now the problem is that now you're going to say, when you say Yom Shabbat, I know you're talking about, from the end of the 6th day. But when you say Saturday, I don't know if you're talking about our 7th day with sunset, or if you're talking about the Gentile 7th day, which starts at midnight. So when we said in the Hebrew way, it's a lot more clear. And I encourage everybody, I don't care it's to the point now where when we're dealing with the Hebrew, I don't care what form of Hebrew you're speaking. And had to take me 30 years to get to that point. And investigating and looking at records from the 3rd century BC. Records from the 3rd century BC, from the 10th century AD. It's the grammar that matters. It's the grammar, the prefixes, the modifiers, the suffixes, the tenses that it's talking about, the moods. That's what matters. That's what hasn't changed throughout time. Well, we have some changes throughout time, in some of those modifiers, because we had the matrix Lexiona, and they put some of the A's in there and took the vowels out maybe. But anyway, that's a whole different story. All right? And when you say Yom, you could be saying the A-class vowel and the vowel. So when you say Yawam, that Yawam, remember, if you say Yom, you're really saying an A-class vowel underneath of your Yod. Like you say law. Law is an A-class vowel, or all. Or if you say Afghanistan, you're saying an A-class vowel. What's the other ones that have, what's the other words in English that have the A-class vowel like that? I can't think, it's some more. It's a whole list of them. I can't think of none but law right now. But you could be saying y'all. Y'all. You're not saying necessarily an O. You're not saying necessarily an O sound, but you could also be saying an A-class vowel. Not just per se an O. Now they might have an O now, but it didn't necessarily have to start out like that, because remember, none of these Hebrew words were written in the Torah with any nikudot, with no vowel points. So when we say Yom Rishon for the first day of the week, it could have been Yom Rishon as opposed to Yom. That O didn't necessarily have to be there because the wawa is now canceled out. But now, most likely, it has the hole in probably over top of the wawa on the left of it, telling you to say an O sound. So you go from the yod and then you make the O sound, and then the mem, all right, probably just has the it might have a stop underneath of it, meaning like a shva. It may have a shva underneath of it. I don't know. That's why we're trying to look it up now. All right. If I can't emphasize enough to my brothers, my sisters, my children, is to learn that Hebrew. You have to learn the Hebrew. You have to learn the grammar of our language. Yeah, it has a yom, all right? When you have the yom here, the yawam, all right? You have the yod or the yad, and then you have the wawa with an O vowel point on it. Then you have the mem at the bottom without a shva. So they're saying yom. But again, my perspective could be that it was just an A-class vowel. Now, in the Hebrew, we have generally accepted without controversy. We clearly have we have two A-class vowels without controversy. Okay, if we're coming from a Yemeni perspective, and those A-class vowels from the Yemeni perspective would be the patah, which is a straight line under the Hebrew letter, a straight horizontal line, or we'd have a patah, which is like a little T. Give me the sharp book over there. The thing is over there. We have the patah. And the patah traditionally made an all sound. It made an all sound, as if we were saying law. Okay? But now we got the patah in the comments. All right? The patah, and we have the comments. All right? But when you go into the Yemeni pronunciation, a little deeper, now we're going to see 3 A-class vowels. A-class vowel meaning we're going to make some form of the A sound, whether it's a, or all, from like law. All right? We have the sede. All right? We have the sede and the sego being pronounced as an A sound. All right? From the Yemeni pronunciation. So that sede, which is the 2 dots, and then the sego, which is 2 dots with a dot in the middle at the bottom, like a triangle, like a grape, which is the Aramaic word for grape, the sego. That was pronounced as an A sound also. And then they also have the comments, which is like a T, pronounced with an A also. And then they have the patah, pronounced as an ah also. So you have ah, sede, and sego being used to make an ah sound. And then you have the comments being used to make an ah class vowel, but with the all sound like law. So Kwamelek Ben Israel said, preach, teach, reach, elder P, stretch out what A class vowels means. Let us remove these nations' gods from our mouths and before our mighty Yah of Israel. Okay, come. All right, so yeah. So those are how we do your R class, some of those A class vowels. And even when you look in the Septuagint, which is the Bible that was translated into Greek in 230 BC, then you have Origen and Jerome that was translating the Bible in Latin and Greek in the early, like in the 300s. All right. Now, they retain some of the ah vowel, where now you have an E in the Tiberian tradition. So you have, for example, for sacrifice or for altar, it's going to be mizbach. But in the ancient tradition, it's always written down as mazbach or mazbach. And if we as Israelites, if we want to say mazbach instead of mizbach or mazbach, if we want to say the whole word instead of cutting it off, guess what? We can. Because nobody, no community of Israelites speak the same form of Hebrew. But they try to criticize us because we use all A-class vowels. Not only A-class vowels, but we use a patah sound under all of our vowels, for all of our vowel sounds. But it's good for us to use a system that has rules in place for pronunciation, so we don't just have to guess when we see a word. So it's not a problem with you saying mizbach or mazbach as opposed to you saying mazabach. Because some brother might see it and say mazabka. But we end it with a closed syllable, that mazabach or mazabach or mazbach. We end it, all right? And this is an example from some of these Tiberian pronunciation tradition of biblical Hebrew, volume 1, written by Jeffrey Kahn, extreme in-depth Hebrew scholar, using ancient records to make the point, and using all of his conclusions, mostly all of his conclusions based on previous points that were made during the time that the Nikudot, the vowel pointing system, was developed or developing. Okay? So in the Babylonian tradition that the Yemeni used, there is no distinction for the Segon. All right? There's no distinction for the Segon. And now that I'm thinking about it, it was the patah and the sego that had the same sound, not the sede. The sede maintained its same. The sede maintains an S sound in the Yemeni tradition, but it maintains an A sound in the Sephardic tradition. Matter of fact, the sede and the sego both use A for the sede, and the sego use an A sound. Or E. There's gonna be an E sound. So and like Elohim. All right, if I'm not mistaken. All right, I got so many notes. All right, so with the Babylonian, the patah and the sede and the sego. Oh, I had the A sound. Patah, sede, and sego. All right. Pamelek says, I get what you're saying. Masoretic has always been confusing to me. Please relate this to Yom days so we can distinguish from the Anglicized days. These be some excellent examples. Or some excellent exempli gracias. He combined examples, the sounds, and play on words using a literary abbreviation also. E.g. is exemplar gracias, which means for example, and then EGS is like eggs, like you're saying, example. Right, so the point is that the Hebrew, look up, then go to any site, or go to Genesis and look at the days of the week, first day, second day, third day, and just use that as your example. Go to BibleHub.com and go to interlinear and read Genesis 1 and see how does it say first day, second day, third day. All right? And the way it relates is just that no matter how you pronounce it, you say Yom, you say Yawam, all right? Just as long as you're saying it, you know, in a way that you can prove academically as a replacement for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right? So just as long as you can use a system where you can go in and say, this is how you say it. This this how the pronunciation, you know, is supposed to be for these words. So that's all you got to do. You know, so if you want to, you know, say it in a Yemeni way or Sephardic way, we have to be more mature with people. As long as you have the understanding of the grammar that you're using, you're okay. Now let's bring it from the days back to this day, all right, of the day of Pentecost, all right, or the day of Shabuot, Shabuot, all right, which is how we usually see it in the Bible when it talks about the feast of weeks, all right. So it's the understanding. That's why we're going to have different pronunciations, but the grammar has to be, you know, universally accepted as the same, because the grammar can change, all right. The context won't change, but the vowel point can change. Okay. So if you go into Genesis chapter 1, you'll have the first day, you'll have the second day, right? You have the third day, the fourth day, fifth day, and sixth day. It has one day in verse 5 of Genesis, but it says Yom Echad, or it says Echad. So Yom Echad is going to be day number 1. Right? You go into Genesis chapter 1, verse 8. It says the second day in the English, right? But in the Hebrew it says Yom Sheshi, right? Yom Sheshi, right? So that She is going to be, or Salaki, Yom Sheni, for 2. Remember Shani, Shanya, and Shana for year all have the same root. So year isn't always something through a 12-month cycle per se. Because when it says when you harvest at the year's end, that's the end of that agricultural cycle that takes place in like around the 7th month. So Shani, all right, and Shana have the same root for 2. So this is Yom Sheni, all right? Yom Sheni. Or you may say Yom Shani, all right? Or Yom Shanya, all right? So that's going to be the, how you would say the second day. Now, if you go into verse 13, all right, it's going to say Yom Shelishi under the vowel pointing system, all right? Yom Shelishi. Or you say Yom Shayalashia, which Shelishi is a lot easier to say. Yom Shelishi, it's going to be a lot easier to say. Now you say Yom Shelishi, or you can say Yom Shelishi with the Y on the end of it, since it does end with the Yod. Or you can say Shalayashya, which is going to be still here, right? Now you go, and you can play this back and record it and write it down. I mean, it's recorded, so you can just play it back and listen to it. So for the 4th day, All right, how are we gonna say that? For the fourth day, you're gonna say Yom, and this says with a B ye, with a B, or some people say Revi. I don't believe in saying a V when you don't have a dagesh inside of the bayath, because that's the sound of now. It may make a difference in other books of the Bible. It could make a difference when you go into closer toward the end of our phases, going toward, the Roman period, books that are written more closely in those periods, like when you're reading maybe like Esther and stuff like that. It could make a difference because it very well could have been a distinction between saying Av and Ab. Could have been a distinction at that time frame in the development of the Hebrew. All right, but you would say now, would it be Yom, would it be, all right, or Yom, would it be, right? Or you could say Yom Rab Ya Rai. Now, which one you want to say? All right? You want to say Yom Rab Yahai, or you say Yom Ribi? Which one you want to say? All right? So that's going to be the fourth day. Now, the fifth day, we're going to see in Genesis chapter 1, verse 23. All right? Now, that's going to be Yom. Now, this one says Chemishi. All right? Chemishi. Or you can say Yom Chamiyashya. Yom Chamiyashya. All right? Chamiyashya. Or Yom Chemishi. All right? You can say Yom Chemishi also. Right now, getting down to it, for this sixth day, which is Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, right? You want to say Yom HaShishi. Yom HaShishi. All right? You could also say you can say Yom Shishi or Yom Shashya. Shishi. Or you can say Yom Shashya. Or you can say Yom Shashai. Yom Shashai. All right? Yom Shai. That yod at the end is pronounced, can be said at the Y itself. All right? Or something that make a I sound. She. But even when you say, you're still making that Y sound though. That I sound. The Y sound, even when you say the I. Because yes. She. All right? She. So she, because they got a hidik at the bottom of it. They have a hidik at the bottom of it. And then they have another shin with a hidik at the bottom of it. Then they have the yod. So we don't just leave that yod off at the end. That's why I'm telling you, you can say she, or you can say she, with that Y sound at the end. Or you can say Yom Shishiyam. So it's at your discretion. All right? So now, and finally, when we get into Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, when it tells us that Yahweh rested on the seventh day, we have Shebi Yi. All right? Shebi. But we would actually say it Shebi Ria, or Ri. All right, with that Iyom, or that Ayin. You have to start pronouncing your Ayin the right way. We're so used to saying Ayin, that you forget the guttural that comes before the Ayin, the Ayin, or the Ayin. Some people say Ayin. Okay? Ayin. All right? Ayin. So it will be Yom. It will be Yom Shalri. Yom Sha Bi Then you would do the ayin with a re. Because remember, it's going to be like ra, re, ri, ro, ru. You only really have to pronounce the anyway, I'm not gonna get into that rule right now. So it'd be Yom Shevi, all right? Sheni Shevi. He said, good facts, as a rookie, I still don't know why some call this week's Peshat Sheni Shel Shabuot. Why Sheni Shel? Why Sheni Shal of? Sheni or the second, maybe it's the second of. Because with that Sheni is going to be second or two of Shabuot. I can't really adequately answer that question, unfortunately. Some call it Sheni of Shabuot. But Sheni is it could be also making a reference to the year end. All right, it could be making a reference to the year end. All right, because we know that Sheni is related to Shana, which is year. So or it can also be, not the end of the year. Not the end of the year. Got nothing to do with the year right now. Sheni, Shel, just of. I don't know why they have the Shel there, or why they even have the Sheni, Shel, Shabuot there myself. I'd have to look into that and come back to you about that. All right, so we're in the last hours of it now, of this feast day. All right, we're in the last hours of Shabuot, or Shabuot, all right? Shabuot. We're in the last hours of it now. Maybe over in a few hours. Any more statements or questions on there? Okay, let me get out. All right. Let me get out of here. All right, so we're going to be concluding now. We get to understanding a few points. Hope everybody understood. If you don't, you can send me a direct message, and I'll try to, help you as much as I can to understand everything a little better. All right. I want you to grow. I don't want you to be stuck. I don't want you to be under somebody's thumb to get knowledge. I want you to be able to respect us as elders, respect us as teachers, respect us as students, and take that and get deeper into what's given to you to come with a more clear conclusion. Not to go off and get something totally off and different and the opposite. We're not talking about that. We're talking about enhancing, improving, all right, fine-tuning the knowledge that's already out there, the da'af, all right, the da'af, all right, the da'it or da'it, right? You got to take the knowledge and you got to filter the knowledge through proper instruction. And you don't filter it through the 7 pillars of wisdom or filter it through the Tawarah or Tawarah, you're not going to get the proper understanding. So your instruction that you're trying to give people is going to be flawed. Heck, I would even settle for if you use Hillel's 7 rules of hermeneutics to reach your conclusion, because that is still going to keep you on point, especially if you try to walk through all 7. But most people don't even walk through all 7. They just look for an English word in another verse, and they say, this is the breakdown. This is the precept to go with that. They call it precepting, which is a fine methodology per se, but when it's used, it doesn't have the linguistic or it's not, those words in English don't always have the same meaning from the Hebrew. So you can't you can't present anything like that. And second of all, if you don't understand and walk in the Torah, you're not qualified to teach the scriptures, because you're not walking in the foundation of what we all need in order to make it into the kingdom, which is obedience to the laws, commandments, and statutes, of Yahweh. So all the academic knowledge somebody has doesn't hold water if they're breaking the commandments. Okay, so you can't be breaking the commandments. All right? All right. All right. Now, if you want to know that ayin sound, what it should be, what's the sound of it, what it should be, you can look it up to be an either a pharyngeal fricative or a uvular fricative. All right. And if you want to see the pronunciation, you can go to a video on YouTube channel called Ancient Semitic, and you can look at the video called Ancient Semitic 4 with the Roman numeral for 4, Classical Hebrew, and you can go to the 35-minute and 11-second mark, and the man gives the historical references and explains the pharyngeal fricative and the uvular fricative of the sound haim, the sound for haim, all right? So that's going to be it for now. Any questions or comments on anything? Nothing on there? All right. Any closing remarks? All right, everybody. All right, may Yahweh bless and protect all of you. We're going to send up some prayers momentarily, and we'll talk to all of y'all later. We may even be on later on to go over some more information. All right, Yahweh bless you all, and in the name of Yasharahla Masharah. Much love to everybody. Got to roll out. Really, really, really appreciate this. Bina Chokmah schooling. All right, all praise to the Most High, no problem at all. All right, our job is to serve our people, and that's what we try to do with truth. All right, with truth. All right, Shalom Alaikum, everybody. Hallelujah.